All right, well, we're going to continue with this discussion. Let's bring in John Ransom. He's the Managing Director and Director of Healthcare Research at Raymond James. John, thank you for being here. I mean, it seems like you're not deterred at all from your bullish call on UNH. Why do you think the markets are wrong in the reaction today?
So as one of the panelists mentioned, if you look at the last 5 years, every time the stock gets to a 30% or more discount to the S&P, it's bounced, number one. Number two, I think a lot of this concern is rearview mirror. So to take the coding, totally agree with the coding scrutiny, but what people have to remember, this is way in the weeds, the government changed the coding in 2024. It's called V28. So they eliminated about 2,300 codes when they moved from ICD-9 to ICD-10, which happened for the rest of the world in 2015. So they eliminated a bunch of codes that triggered these payments. And so looking in the past and say, well, in 2021, they had a code, that got dramatically curtailed with V28. UnitedHealth has said this is a $15 billion funding hit over 3 years. So they ground through the numbers last year by cutting about $4 billion SG&A. But I think the focus on coding is fighting the last war.
You know, you've noted that the Biden administration was really hostile to UnitedHealthcare. Do you see a difference coming up here with this new Trump administration and how they may be treated?
Yeah. Well, what Biden, agencies aren't supposed to reduce funding like CMS did. That's supposed to go through Congress. So I don't see another $15 billion cut coming out of Trump. But the next clue we're going to get, so look, it's uncertain. Okay, let's be clear. Oz and then it's been a little Delphic. But what's going to happen in April is the final rate notice will come for the Medicare Advantage plans. And that will be a big tell because in the preliminary rate notice, Biden rushed this out. They didn't include any data from 2024. 2024 is probably a 10% cost year for the plans. And so the big tell is going to be, I think, in April when the Trump administration pushes out the final rule. And then we're going to have a sense of how they're thinking about the industry.
Hey, John, getting back to really the fundamental thesis around the stock, and I know you're very bullish. I think you've got a 640 target on it. Talk about even just the guide that they've set out there for 25. I mean, I would argue this is very cheap. When you look at their MLR guide, I think, relative to peers, again, I think this is one that if anyone can blow through the bar here, I think it's these guys.
Yeah, they struggled last year. We called it winning ugly. And then this year, as you know, the earnings growth is about 4 points below their target, their 13 to 16% target. As we look at 2026, that's when I think you'll see some re-acceleration. And then in 2027, we fully lap this V28. So, look, I agree with what people said. I think this is going to take a while because we're going to chop around, and 2025 is going to be okay, not great. But again, as the market looks 6 months forward, I think two things are going to happen. Number one, I think this rate notice could be a lot better than the preliminary. And then number two, and this is the key, medical costs are starting to flatten out for Medicare Advantage plans. The big problem with United is at the same time Biden cut, we had a bad trend. And we think 3 years on, the comps get easier and easier. And we think the trend now, again, first quarter, you could have some flu noise, but we think medical trend's going to flatten out and the rate notice could be an upside surprise against the backdrop of the stock trading where it is.
John, it's Karen. Thanks for coming on. So let me ask you, do you think that this investigation is just specific to UnitedHealth or could widen out, or do you see any shifting of who's got a bigger Medicare Advantage business a couple years down the line as a result of this?
I don't know the first question, but what I'd point out is that there was no news broken today. This investigation was started by the outgoing administration. And it was just, we kind of thought people knew. And so the way these things normally go, and I think you guys said it perfectly, is that we get a settlement in 2 years, people forget about it, and it's going to be some immaterial sum of their, $460 billion market cap. I mean, normally these are fairly small. And again, just the thing about coding, this is so in the weeds. And what happens is you get a judge and you get the government, you get the company, and you have a squabble about it. Is exactly like taxes, as one of your guys said before. Did you document this coding appropriately? And again, just to wrap a bow on this, I thought it was so crazy that the government allowed codes to drive payments and you didn't have to treat. And so eliminating that, I think, is a positive step. If you give truth serum to the industry, they would say, yeah, it got a little out of control with all the supplemental benefits and the fact that coding, the government sort of set the game up where they created bad incentives. And so I think, again, this is kind of rearview mirror stuff, but that's kind of where we are. But yeah, I agree also, it's not going to be a tomorrow thing. I think it's going to be a grind up over the next few months.